Hey everyone, today we are going to make milk art. So we'll start with what you need, we'll do the experiment, and then we'll talk about why this happens when we make milk art. Let's get started. Milk art, what you are going to need is a bowl of some sort, a half a cup of milk, which for me is in this thermos, dish soap, a cotton swab or Q-tip, food coloring, preferably in more than one color, and for an extra optional experiment, you can pull out some pepper. The first step is pouring your milk into your container. I did not have mine measured out in advance, but you want to pour that half a cup of milk in your container. My container is a little wide, so I pour actually a little more than a half a cup to make sure that whole bottom is thoroughly covered with milk. The next thing that you are going to do is add your food coloring. If you have 3 different colors of food coloring, that is your best option. You are going to add a couple dots of food coloring in different places. So I added 7 dots of my green food coloring. Eight drops of my blue. And 10 drops of my red. You can do however many drops of food coloring that you would like. You just need to have them spaced apart to start. And your next step is going to be taking your Q-tip or your cotton swab and dipping it or putting a little bit of that dish soap on the end. And our third step is really where we begin the experiment. With that soap-dipped end of that Q-tip, you are going to touch it to your food coloring, and you are going to see what happens. So before we dip it, what do you think is going to happen? Let's see if that hypothesis is right. You can keep dipping that soap dip Q-tip as many times as you would like to get different patterns. So what you see happening here is when I dip my Q-tip, everything spreads out. All that food coloring spreads out. Why do you think that is? We're going to look more into that into more detail in a minute. If you want to try the extra step of the experiment, you can throw some pepper on your experiment. And you can try to guess what the pepper will do when you add it to the experiment. You want to add the pepper right after you add the drops of food coloring and before you touch the milk and food coloring with the soap dipped cotton swab. Now that we've done that, let's figure out why and how this works. So how does this work? Well, milk has fat in it, and the food coloring floats on top of that fat. As you could see when you stuck it in there, that food coloring just sat right on top of that milk. The fat is all connected with bonds. So you can kind of think of it like the little pieces of fat are holding hands with each other in that milk. Dish soaps, they're used on greasy or oily dishes because it breaks the bonds in fats and allows them to separate. So it's really breaking those hands apart. So when you add the dish soap to the milk, the fat separates and moves, making your art magical. So when you add the dish soap to the milk, the fat separates and moves, making your magical milk art. That's why, since that food coloring sits on top of all that fat, when that fat moves from that soap touching it, it spreads out in different directions and gives you that super cool design that is unique to your own magical milk experiment. Now, some questions to think about. Does the temperature of the milk have any effect on the pattern or design? Would different types of milk, like whole milk or skim milk, be different? What did the pepper do if you added pepper before the soap? What happens to that pepper? All good questions and all things that you can check out on your own and do more of the magical milk experiment. And a friendly reminder to everyone, please do not drink that milk after you've made your magical milk art. It needs to be dumped down the drain and properly disposed of.